I'm super excited to have Lex here today. Man, guys, let me tell you, I'm excited because me and Lex, okay, so I kind of reached out to her the same way I reached out to Sarah, the girl that was on last week. And through TikTok, I found her and everything. And so I reached out to her and she was like, hey, would you mind if we like FaceTime before kind of get to know each other? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, I didn't even think about that. That's a great idea. So we did, and we talked for a while the other day, and it was awesome. And we totally connected. So I'm like, this is going to be exciting. So I'm really excited to hear what the Lord has put on your heart to share today. So, Lex, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your testimony and your story?
Yeah. So for the last few years of my life, I have been in college. I just recently transferred to Liberty last semester. So it was like last fall. I did 2 years of community college back home, and then, felt like the Lord was leading me to come to this new big school. And I never really expected to go to some very large Christian school and do all the things that he's called me to do. But I sure am really thankful for it. And so it's been really awesome just to see how he has led me back to him in this time, and just showed me more of himself through me having to like learn how to be content and trust him in times that like have felt so, I don't even know how to explain.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where I'm at, just kind of being in nursing school and figuring out how to walk with the Lord and be faithful in the little things so that, be faithful with much.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's one of my things I struggle with is contentment, staying content in kind of where I'm at. Cause I'm always wanting like grass is greener on the other side type. Like if I'm traveling, I'll be happier. If I'm that's my dog, of course. So if you wanna touch on maybe your testimony or like sorry guys about the dog. If you want to oh my gosh, Blue, stop, please. If you want to touch on kind of we have a thing on here called stop. We have a thing on here called like mustard seed moments. It's kind of like a little sprout in your faith that's kind of helped your faith along the way. So like a moment in time where you're just like, wow, this is going to completely transform my faith.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of those moments, I feel like, but one of the biggest ones that I feel like is the most recent, and it has been like contributing to my testimony more recently, was one night on my dorm room floor. I had just come back from campus community of being at Liberty, and God just like wrecked me. Like it was just me inside my dorm, and I was reading the Word of God and like just really like asking Him to like show me my sin, like show me all these things. And I don't know, I look back to that moment in time and I'm like, it's just so crazy to see how even in the last, 4 or 5 months, God has taught me so many different lessons that I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. But I think the biggest one, like I was saying in this season, is contentment, and knowing that like when you have joy in your heart, love is a reflex. And so like, that's just been my biggest, I feel like, thing that's been driving me. Like if I stay joyful in the Lord and I find that contentment in Him, then like He's going to produce everything that He needs to for me to like get through this season in love and grace and walking with Him.
Yeah, that's awesome. One I was reading a book and I talked about this on here before, but The WellWatered Woman. And I don't know if you've read it, but it's really good. And I was reading it and it talked about contentment. And I was like, wow, that one really is like that convicted me because I have that issue. And I was like, how do you fix that? Because there's obviously things I want to do in life that I'm like, I want that. So how are you able to stay in that joy and that contentment?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely a hard balance of like, how do I learn how to be content when I, have all these things, but then also learning that like, it's not our things that make us content. It's rather just like finding that in the Lord. And so I think a lot of the reasons why, like for me in my life, why I felt discontent is because I have this perception or this expectation of how the Lord is going to move and work. And then like when it's met in a different way, I'm kind of like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. But like, that was even better than I expected, or maybe like that's refining me for a moment in the future. But I don't know. I think I've just found that like in those moments of being alone, because that's a lot of like, I mean, I moved all the way from my hometown in Florida to Virginia. And like at first trying to make friends and doing all these things, it was hard for me to find contentness because I was like, Lord, I don't have any friends. And I don't even know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And like all of the worry and the doubt and the fear. And it's such a classic verse, but like over and over again, the Lord like reminded me of Philippians 4 of like, I have learned to be content in every situation, like whether well fed or hungry. And in my situation, whether like a large group of friends or none, like you learn to find contentment because like Christ is the strength in us that keeps us sustained every single day. And so that's just been my anchor holding me like in these last few months, and like hopefully for the rest of my life, of just like I can seek contentment in the Lord if I change my perspective to be focused on him. Like he says in his word, like if we keep our eyes fixed on the author and the creator, like he's going to give us a fresh perspective. He's going to renew our minds. He's going to do all those things that he promises in his word that he's going to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good. I had never thought of it kind of that way, is just kind of how he will answer your prayers and stuff, but in a different way. Cause that's so good. Cause it's always that, you never know when he's going to answer your prayers, but then when he does, something I heard the other day was don't look at don't to see where your progress is. Don't look at where you are now, look at where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about that a lot, because I'm like, you're so right. There's so many prayers that have been answered, but through me, but I'm still so focused on, oh, but I want to be there instead. But he's
Yeah.
currently answering my prayers right now, which is where I should be content in that. And so I really like that. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. It's like such a cool thing too, because I think we get so caught up in like, and I know for me, this is also like a big part of me, like learning how to be content is like, we look back at our life and we wish back to a season that we were in, but while we're in it, we like fail to recognize like all that God is doing in those little moments that are like making you who you are.
Yeah.
And I mean, that goes into a whole nother like topic of identity and stuff, but it's just like really cool because if we can just like learn to like be where our feet are and be exactly where God has placed us and know like it says in Esther, like for perhaps this is the moment for which he has created us, like, and we trust him with that and we give him that, like he's gonna meet our needs, like he's gonna be the daily bread every single moment, every single step, and like teaching us that like we can find what we're looking for in him.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think being content and having that joy in him is kind of part of the whole it's the little things concept. Like being
Yeah.
content brings you joy. That's how you stay positive through what you're going through, is by finding
Mhm.
contentment in where you are, because there's always somewhere that everybody always says the grass is always greener, but it's really not. Like once you get there, you're always
Yeah.
wanting something more instead of just accepting where you are and being content in that. And so I really like that. That was a good example of that.
Yeah. And I think too, just like living in such a culture where like social media and self gratification and like all of these things are such a big deal that we like forget that we're human beings and God created us to like go through the motions of life with him.
Mhm.
And like that's such a big thing of like we can stay positive and we can do all of these amazing things, but like in those moments when like we are struggling to be content, because they're going to come up, or in those moments where we are going through it, like how can you say, although I'm feeling these things, my feelings are valid, but they're not the truth of who I am and who God says that I am. And then just like walking forward and okay, like although I am struggling with these things, like God has called me to be like a child of God. God has called me and told me that this is who I am. And like in that, finding that peace, because they're not always going to feel content. You're not always going to feel, whatever emotions come and go. But like that's the beauty of the truth of who Christ is to us, is like because of the cross and because of what he's done, like there is a joy that never runs out. Like there's that hope in that, although we may not always feel happy, we're always going to have joy because of the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, yeah, that was good. When you said that, your feelings are still valid, that is so important, because to me, it's like I'm always telling myself, no, don't feel that. No, don't feel that. Don't do that. But it's like I can feel that. That's okay. But there are reasons that I'm feeling this, and that there are also things to combat that feeling with. And
Yes.
so I have those feelings of, you know, sadness and anxiety and things, and that's okay, because we're human and we feel that. And that's why he mentions it in the Bible, to not
Yeah.
be afraid, don't have anxiety, don't be anxious over things of this world, because he's conquered them all. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to know, like, those feelings are totally valid. People in the Bible suffered through those same things, but we have things to combat that feeling with. And that's what I like about that, is because with discontentment we also have things to combat that with, which is joy and the peace knowing that there's a plan for what we have and there's a reason that we're in the place that we are right now. And I love that you brought up
Absolutely.
Esther, because a girl that was on the podcast a while ago, her name was Tate, and she said something she said that same verse that you said, and but it was in a completely different context, like we were talking about a completely different thing. So I love how that verse had some dualism behind it and was able
Yeah.
to be used in like, be content where you are, but also find joy in the situation you're in because you're there for a reason.
Yeah. And I think too, like I was kind of talking about our culture and like how everything is very like, here's like all the vacations I'm going on, and we scroll through social media and we like compare our lives to like so many other people's lives. And I think that also like feeds our discontentness and all of the things and all of the anxiety and the worry and the fear and like our circumstances and all these things. But like when we're believers, like the cross is absolutely the opposite of those things. Like we see that like before Jesus went to the cross, like he was asking God, he said, Lord, like take this cup from me, like, but if it is your will, then let it be done. And
Mhm.
so in life, I think, being content, like we're never going to find that in all the fun things that we do or our Instagram reel or whatever. Like we're going to find contentment in those seasons of suffering and pain and hardship and anxiety and all of that, because whenever we see the purpose of like, okay, although this is like what's going on in my life, like we see in scripture, like in Hebrews, I think it is, I can't even remember, but it talks about how like for the joy set before Jesus, like he endured the cross because he knew that there was something greater. And so when we have that same mindset of like, because of what Christ has done for me on the cross, like if I lay down my life and pick up my cross, although I'm going to go through hardship and pain and feel anxiety and worry, like there is a joy beyond this, like, and that is found in the Lord and the Lord only.
Yeah, for sure. Something I've been thinking about a lot today, actually, which is funny that you brought this thing up. But I was thinking about how joyful it is to have a genuine joy, because it's hard to
Mhm.
explain to somebody who doesn't feel it. Because if you told me a year ago that I would be joyful, I'm like, yeah, okay, well, where, like, what am I going to be doing? Where am I going to be
Right.
at? And so finding that genuine joy with things not of this world is so pure, because it's a joy that you can't explain. It's a joy that's like, I don't care what I'm doing. I don't care, what food I have or what the weather's like. Like, I'm genuinely joyful because I have somebody that has carried my burdens, died
Mhm.
for those, and then tells me that I'm going to be okay, and I know I'm going to be okay. Like, whatever happens in this life, when I pass and I'll go to heaven, and there I will never have to worry about those things again. And so, like, there's that genuine pure joy. It's a pure joy. That's all I can say about it. It's a joy that's nothing like you can get from anything of this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like as believers, we have such a misconception of like once we become Christians, and like this is a big part of like what I share through social media too, is we have this misconception, and I'm like guilty of it too. I fell into it when I first became a Christian of like my life is going to be like so much greater and all these things. But like the enemy knows that because you're closer to Christ, like he's going to try to pull you away from that. So when you do start seeking after the Lord, like there may be times that you do feel more anxious or more discontent or more whatever, but it's what we do with that, what we do with our doubt, like,
Mhm.
and how we press into the Lord with it too. Because like it's just very easy to fall into those spirals of like, oh my goodness, well, like I'm following Christ and now everything is just like not going the way that I thought. But like it says in scripture that like the Lord's ways are higher than ours, his thoughts are
Mhm.
higher than ours. And I know that every time I've chosen to trust God, like the fruit of that has been so much greater than anything I could have ever even imagined for myself. And the doors that he's opened and the doors that he's closed too. Like it's just amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And that is it's a it's another hard concept to kind of wrap your head around, is that like, okay, well, I'm in this relationship with God and I have this bond with him, but like,
Mhm.
why is my life almost seem harder? And I think the reason that it seems that way is because, sure, I mean, we're going to be, mocked and whatever, like that's what it says that's going to happen, and that's fine. But it's also things where you start feeling convicted about things you weren't convicted about before. That's
Yeah.
why it seems more difficult, at least to me, because I'm like,
Mhm.
sure, I mean, I wasn't feeling convicted about this before, but now I am feeling convicted, and that's why it seems so much more difficult. But it's like a good feeling. It's like okay, well, I'm changing for the better. But at the time, it doesn't seem like that, and so another thing is just when you're going through things, you're able
Mhm.
to know that you're going to get out of them. Like
Yeah.
through Christ, you know that whatever is happening, there's the light at the end of the tunnel. And so it seems difficult because you're called to lean on him and give those to him at and lay them at his feet, those issues you have. And it's hard to do that because for me, I like to carry my burdens by myself, and I had
Yeah.
to learn how to lean on others in those situations. And so it's hard for me to be like, okay, like here's everything I'm going through, like take it. That's what's hard for me. That's what makes being a Christian and having that, and that's to me is it's those things that make it seem difficult, but genuinely when you take a step back, there's a greater joy that you have that you didn't have before. And so when it all comes to balance, it's actually it gives your life purpose.
Yeah, for sure. Something I heard today from somebody that really just like kind of got my mind going. I don't know really what you said in particular that made me be reminded of this, but like we think that after we become Christians, like it's about how much we don't sin or how much we don't do these things, but really it's about just like we were talking about finding that contentment and fixing your eyes on Jesus that like makes you realize there's always going to be something in your life that you're going to struggle with, whether that's, like sexual sin or whether that's drinking or, like getting drunk or partying or whatever. And that's like a really big part of my testimony is like, I thought for so long, like I was finding joy in all of these things of the world.
Mhm.
And then when I really found the Lord, like he showed me like there's something so much greater beyond like the things that you can see. And I think that like people of the world don't understand that because God hasn't revealed maybe all of that to them yet.
Mhm.
But it's just really cool because after you like see Jesus and after you see what he's done and you see like the life, the abundant life that he gives us here on earth, like it's so much greater than anything.
Yeah, for sure. Those it's hard because those things, like I said, like that joy that comes from them is so on like it's so surface level. It's so like,
Mhm.
okay, I get that joy only if I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Only if I'm drunk, only if I'm, partying. And it's hard because that's not a genuine joy. Like it's
Mhm.
not pure, and it's hard to see. I mean, unless
Mhm.
you like you said, unless God reveals himself to you in Jesus and his pure love for you, it's nearly impossible to see because you're kind of sitting there and you're like, I don't see how anything could be better than just living my life like what I'm doing right now. And there
Yeah.
is, but it's hard. It is a difficult thing to see. And, our age is hard too because it's college and everybody's doing
Yeah.
everything in college. And you're like, all right, well, this is fun. Like, this is awesome. It's not. And it is hard to see and like stick your head out and be like, holy smokes, like what's going on? And,
Yeah.
but I like how you said that. I mean, that's so true.
And just like walking in that freedom too, because like for so long I thought that, the things that I was doing in my own flesh and in what I found to bring me happiness and make me joyful essentially like in that time when I was like not living for the Lord. Um I look back now and I'm like, man, it is just so crazy to see that like I have a fresh perspective of like how good God is in the midst of that. Like
Yeah.
how much you can walk in the freedom that Jesus gives us. Like we aren't to use our freedom for like gratifying our flesh, but you see freedom in a new light.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, because you know that the sins you commit, which we're bound to commit sins, but it's like
Mhm.
you have this it's not even just like it's not even moral dilemmas at that point. It's just like, okay, I know this is wrong. Like it specifically says in the Bible, this is wrong. It's not a question. Like I don't have to question, is this a gray area? It's not. Like the Bible
Yeah.
is it's black and white. It doesn't say, you can do this every now and then, but don't do it on this day, or like it's
Mhm.
black and white. So it's nice to know like, hey, I have this blueprint of what I need to do, what I don't need to do. And then
Mhm.
also knowing that, there's always somebody to be there. There's always somebody to lean on. When I feel my most lonely, that's him isolating me to build me in our relationship, and that there's something greater. And something I've been thinking about a lot is, I mean, literally a year ago, I was calling my dad every day crying about my concussion and everything. And now I'm here and I'm getting to talk to you, and there's so many good things going on. And I'm just like, wow. So that's why I go back to just don't look at where you are right now, look at where you were, because so many of my
Yeah.
prayers have been answered. And and I didn't even know it until I looked at, oh my gosh, like I thought my headache today was bad. It was so much worse a few days ago or a few years ago
Yeah.
or whatever. And so it's just been really awesome to see that. And like that's what we have him for. And so it's hard to see from like my small little immature self right now and seeing the bigger picture. It's so hard to see the bigger picture sometimes.
Yeah. But that's a cool concept too that you were kind of talking about, is like you're walking out prayers that you used to pray. And like God knows the desires of your heart. And after we like commit our lives to him and say like, Lord, okay, I want to follow you, like he's going to meet those as you glorify him, and he's going to like see, the bigger picture of that. And so it's just cool to think that like you could be living in other people's prayers. And our God is a big God, and like big faith doesn't need like big words. Like we could pray the simplest prayer of like, Lord, like refine me, Lord, give me patience, Lord, help me to be content, Lord, help me to experience your freedom. And like he's going to sometimes give you trials or experiences, like for example, like your concussion or things like that, so that now you can walk out those prayers that you used to pray. And that's the beauty of like who God is. I don't know, like we don't see it in the moment, then we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, God, you've done so much.
Yes. It's so funny too because I literally was doing that yesterday. Like I saw this guy on a TikTok and said that, and that's totally why I'm saying that now. But I think it's so funny because I was like working out and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm not making any progress." And then I was like, wait a second, is that a quad muscle? Like, what's that?
Yeah.
She's kind of popping out. And so then I was like banging my head against the wall, like, what on earth? Because I've made so much progress and so many of my prayers have been answered in the past year alone. And so, I mean, the past month alone, because I've been praying over this podcast so much, and I know so many of my family members are. And I was like, Lord, I pray that you know, give me people like in wisdom that I can talk to people. And I have been doing that and I'm like, what is going on? And so I like am racking my head as to why I've been
Mhm.
so stubborn to see his power and his glory for so long. And now I'm like, holy crap, like you've been doing this stuff this whole time. And now I'm like, what on earth is wrong with me? But it's funny. It's a funny process, really.
Yeah. And that's so like that's a cool point too, because then you think about it like when you learn to find that contentment of like you seeing all that God has done, like you'll thank him for the unanswered prayers too. Because like it's so crazy how many times God doesn't answer prayers that we pray because he has like we don't even have the faith to pray for what he wants to bless us with. Like that's how much he loves us. And we have this misconception of God that he just is like wants us to suffer and wants us to go through all of these hard things. And like that's not the truth. Like God loves us so much that he cares more about drawing us near to him than he cares about, the circumstances that we may face that feel overwhelming and hard. Like he cares more about the ways that you're going to grow in him and grow with him than anything else. And that is like the love of the Father that we have.
Oh man, that was good. That was really good. Way to go.
All the Lord, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's so funny, but yeah, that's so good. It's so true. And it's such a funny concept to think that there are so many things that we're like, wow, if I had this, my life would be so much better. Like if I was rich, which I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, if I was
Right,
rich,
right,
I'd
right.
have
Paying off
no
the student loans, you know what I'm
problems
saying?
and blah blah blah. And I'm like, no
Right.
issues. And but that's so true. There's so many prayers that I could be praying that I don't even think about because he has such a grand plan for all of us. And I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do, which I love. The other day, everybody, when we were on the phone, I was like, I don't really know what I want to do with my major. And she totally commented, Lex totally was like, you know what? Like, it's okay. Like, be where your feet are. Just know that God's going to reveal to you his plan eventually. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I called my dad and I was like, Dad, this girl just totally saved my life because I was totally stressing about, I was totally stressing about my major. And now I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to get this major and, we're going to go with the flow. And so it's just been funny because it's totally, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what do I do next? And it kind of comes with that anxiety of not being content. Like, oh my goodness, what am I missing out on? What are all the options for me? What all can I do with what I'm doing right now? And so just kind of praying for that contentment and praying for that peace because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like it doesn't all need to be done right now. I don't need to travel all in my 20, like year 20 of my life. like everything will come to pass and everything will
Yeah.
come as it comes, and it doesn't need to be done all right now. And so kind of
Yeah.
focusing on not like rushing around and just being content with where I'm at. But yeah, that's super good.
Yeah. Going back to that conversation that we had that day on the phone, that was so good. But it kind of reminds me too of like, you can't miss out on God's best yes for your life, no matter what decision you make, because when you're following him, I kind of think about it like, we think so often that there's this one specific plan that is like, okay, if I just do this, then like God will, carve this path or whatever the case may be. But like, it's whenever we give it up and we're like, okay, Lord, here I am. I want you to have all of me. I can't miss out on your best yes. I kind of think about it like all of these different paths of us having free will and making choices. God knows all of them. And, as we're following him, like we may make one decision that leads us down this path, but then like maybe we mess up a little bit or we, get ourselves in a rut. We kind of turn away from God. We go down this path, but like God still knew that we were going to do that. But like it says in scripture, God literally uses every single things in our lives to give him glory and for the good of us. And when you know that, like you're not going to miss out on the things that God has for you because you're following him.
Yeah, that's kind of like the it's kind of like in, the movies when they're like, if you mess up this one time, you're like your destiny, like, but it's so crazy. Like we do have a destiny, like we have that. And like you said, like screwing up one time is not gonna completely ruin that. And but yeah, that's really encouraging because there's this plan that he has for us, and nothing we're gonna do is just gonna change that plan because his plan is set. But yeah, that's really good. Oh
Yeah.
man, I totally had a question for you, but I can't even think of it. Daggum. Well, tell us about your major and like what you're wanting to do with your life because I know it, but the people don't know it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So I am somebody who wants to do everything, but have to be settled down in the Lord and just allow him to do what he wants to do. But yeah, so right now I'm going to nursing school. My biggest dream is to like obviously go to different places in America and outside of America to like reach those people who may not have the same needs that we do with healthcare in America. Obviously it's broken, but in other countries when they don't have resources and things, like I just think it's a beautiful picture of getting to like serve people everywhere. And yeah, I never really wanted to be a nurse. I always grew up saying I'm not going to be a nurse. I wanted to be an astronaut. I love space, like
I love
everything to
that.
do with like like everything, just not what I'm doing now. But after I became a believer, the Lord just really like I can't even say more than like he transformed everything about me, and kind of made me realize that like there's a need. And he gave me that love for like science and kind of like the stars and stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, I'm really excited to see where he leads it and kind of going through the motions right now, but finding joy in it and
Yeah.
hoping that he's going to use it for something cool.
Yeah, finding joy in that contentment of not knowing. That's the hardest thing is being
Mhm.
like, I don't know what you're going to do, but I just need to have contentment over the fact I don't know. That is the hardest thing to do ever because it's so
Yeah.
funny. I was calling my dad and I was like, "Dad, I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a control freak, but I did get a little bit of my qualities from my dad and just having to like, wanting to know like the plan. Like I don't really care I'm go with the flow, but I kind of want
Mhm.
little bit of a plan." And
Mhm.
I was like, "Dad, I need you to like help me cuz I it's Wednesday already and I have done like barely any of my homework and I did a puzzle instead of doing homework and now I'm stressed
Mental
and I'm
breaks.
like as I should be stressed. And so like praying for that peace over, there's a lot of stuff going on and just praying that I find God in those moments of chaos is difficult. But
Mhm.
it's all my doing that I did a puzzle instead of my homework. That was on me. That one was my fault. Yeah.
It's okay. We all have to take mental breaks. We all need to like that.
I
So
took like a 4-day mental break, so it's really not much of an excuse, but it's okay. I needed it. I did.
yeah. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
okay, so we have like a lightning round of questions for you.
Okay.
It's 3 questions, but they're big ones. Okay. So the first
Okay.
question is, what is your favorite book right now? Other than the Bible, of course.
I would hope I have more favorite books than just the Bible. Are you saying?
I would hope so too.
You want me to answer it now, or are you gonna ask them all and then?
Oh no, you'll answer the book one first, and then I'll ask you the next one.
Okay. I would say at the moment, it's definitely Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen. She is just such a powerhouse. Like, she's on fire for the spirit. And I think like it's very evident in the way that she like turns everything back to the Lord. And, that's been a big part of this like piece of my testimony and this piece of my life that I'm walking through right now is like, she's teaching, how do you get out of your head and those anxious thoughts and the worry and the doubt and the fear and the discontent? And you learn to see that like God has given us power, love, and sound mind. And so it's been a really sweet reminder. That's been my favorite book in this season that I'm in, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. That's a really good one. It's that one always hits home. I always recommend that one to people.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, and I love her. She's awesome. Okay, sorry. Next question is, what's your favorite verse? And that one's a hard one because I don't even know if I have a favorite verse. There's so many good ones.
Okay, are we talking about favorite life verse or favorite verse at the moment?
You can just say both if you want.
Okay, I would say that my favorite like life verse is Psalms 5:3. It says, if I can remember, it says, every morning I lay the pieces of my life upon your altar and wait for your fire to fall upon my heart. So that is just like, dang, so good. And when I read it for the first time, I was like, why have I never heard this before? I'm just like a bad Christian, I guess, but it's so good. Like, it's such an encouragement to me. And I would say that my favorite chunk of verses right now, and I like use it in every video I make because it just like means something different every day to me, but it's Hebrews 4:12-16, and it says, God's word is living and active and sharper than any double-edged sword. It's able to penetrate as far as the soul is to the spirit and the joints to the marrow. It's able to judge the thoughts and the intentions of the heart. And then it talks a lot about how like Christ, who suffered and like passed through the heavens, is the same God that we can approach the throne of grace with boldness. And so that's just been like a really good like comfort to me in this season.
You have a really good memory. You were made to be a nurse.
The Lord, really, that is one thing. I don't usually flex, but that is one thing. Like, I don't know what it is, but I can memorize words and like poems and like quotes. Like, they stick in my mind for some reason.
Yeah, not me. Oh man. Like anything I've learned in the past, like when we'd have to get up and talk in front of class, none of it's in my head. I think I could tell you, it's all gone. And it's bad because I'd forget them when I stepped in front of the class too. So props to you because I have a tattoo of mine, and every now and then I have to like, wait a second. What are the words? I know the verse. Dad, I know the verse. Dad, don't text me and say you got a tattoo and you don't know the verse. I know the verse, but it's just not like by word. Like I know the premise of. Anyways, okay. I'm sorry. I keep getting off topic.
No, I hear you. That's so funny.
Okay. Now, your favorite part of creation.
Oh,
I know. Like your favorite thing of God's creation that you just love.
Okay. I thought it was going to be hard, but I think it's actually an easy answer. I grew up like living close to the beach always. And so I find a lot of solitude just being able to like sit and look at the waves and like the ocean and stuff like that. And I'm in it like every day when I'm home. So I think it's just like, it amazes me that like the moon like affects the tides, and like it boggles my mind. The ocean, I think, was my favorite part of creation, or like waterfalls, anything that has water. God just did a great job.
Yes, so good. It blows my mind. See, I am one of those people that like, my boyfriend sent me a video yesterday on TikTok about like this person that's just floating and there's nothing around him, and I got sick to my stomach. I was like, I like the ocean, but it scares me like bad.
Yeah.
I get real bad issues. I'm like, also, I'm kind of deathly afraid of jellyfish because I really don't want to know what it feels like to be stung by one. Like I'm really scared.
Yeah.
Like I'll really like anything touches me in the ocean, I will scream. I love it, but I will. And
that's a valid fear. That is, sea creatures are scary. That's a valid fear.
Yeah, and I'm not a good swimmer, so that's probably part of it. Like if something came to get me, I would be gotten. Like I'd be dead. By I wouldn't survive. Yeah, I would not survive. Okay, so before we wrap it up, which this has been so fun, so I don't want to wrap it up.
I
But
know.
before we wrap it up, is there anything you just like a last piece of advice for anybody listening that's just, on your heart that you want to tell everybody?
Yeah. I would say that a big one is, in the midst of this, like, if you're somebody who is struggling with like finding contentment or is struggling with anxiety or fear or worry about the future, I'm going to use that same example, India, that I gave to you on the phone of like, there's a story in Matthew when Simon Peter, which was one of Jesus' disciples, was about to get onto the boat and go catch fish, because that's what he did for a living. He was a fisherman. And the Lord, like when Jesus was walking the earth, he told him, he was like, Simon Peter, you're going to be like a fisher of men. And Simon Peter didn't know what that meant. He was like, Jesus, I don't even know what that means. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then later on down the line, after Jesus had been crucified and he rose from the dead, like God revealed to Simon Peter, like what that meant to him. And he was a disciple and he was sharing the gospel with all those people. And so, whatever season of life you're walking through right now, whether that's, struggling with discontentment or struggling with anxiety or worry or doubt or whatever that may be, like the first thing I want you to know is that you're not alone. And because you don't necessarily have or see that joy yet, maybe the Lord isn't ready to reveal that to you yet. And so, seeking after him with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, like he rewards those who seek after him. And so look for that joy in the small things first, and allow him to just like show to you what that looks like for whatever season you're going through.
Yeah, that's super good. Oh man, that's really good. And I could totally go off on a tangent of that, but I cannot. Okay, so I won't do it. Okay, I won't. Anyways, thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate it so, so much. And I'm so glad that the Lord blessed me with your presence today. And anyways, everybody, thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for watching whatever you decided to do today. And I pray that you have a great week and that you just use, your gifts and that you use your light for the Lord and everything you do and just be the reason someone smiles today. Anyways, bye guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.